Set that. So we'll begin in just a moment. I know we have about 33, give or take, registered, so I'm expecting a few more. And as you come in, you're always invited to join with your camera. If you're comfortable, we always invite that. It's always great to see your faces. Plus, with the new Zoom update, it now allows you to see up to 49 people at one time, which is a lot of faces at once, and that might be a little overwhelming.
More Zoom fatigue.
More Zoom fatigue indeed. I'm going to share my screen. Move this here.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Perfect. And we'll just give it another minute or two as we have a couple of people and we're kind of right at 1:30. Turned out to be a beautiful day today, so I'm very happy. And just checking that my screen is showing with the introduction slide.
Yes.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
And I think I cut somebody off, so. Let's see here. A co-host. All right. So we're at about 1:32, and we have about, we'll say, 70% of the people here at our meeting. I don't have audio. Going to log back in and try again. Okay. So welcome everybody to our call today. This is one of our webinar series. It's our summer fall webinar series. It gives me great pleasure to pass this over to your host today, Mary Garrett Itten and Valerie Olds. I will be in the background kind of monitoring the slides and moving through them, and just invite you all to mute yourselves as you're comfortable. Invite again to turn your cameras on. And this is a presentation, but it's also a conversation. So if any time we invite you to kind of reach out with questions, comments as Mary Garrett and Valerie are going through the slides. So welcome and enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. As Mark said, my name is Mary Garrett Itten. I'm a social worker and an independent consultant and a school board member in a great time of uncertainty. And Val can introduce herself. We are both part of a cohort of trainers in the coach approach, and we are about to graduate after a little over 2 years in our training process. And so we're just really happy to be with you here today. And because we're talking about being safe and seen, if you are comfortable being seen, we'd love to see you on camera. And I'll turn it over to Val to introduce herself.
Thanks, Mary Garrett. Welcome, everyone. I'm Valerie Oles. I am a family member, and I'm also System of Care Administrator for the Philadelphia Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. And as Mary Garrett shared, we are part of a cohort of Pennsylvania folks who have been doing this journey of training together and are about to graduate. So it's my pleasure to be with all of you here today.
Thank you, Val. I am also a family member, and I sometimes forget to introduce myself that way, so I really appreciate the reminder. So this webinar is really focused on a deep dive into feeling safe and seen, and I would also say heard. And we're just going to have a great opportunity to talk about how sometimes our words and interactions unintentionally, because of our neurobiology, may be seen as a threat. And we want to do, as adaptive leaders, which we'll talk a little bit more about, we want to decrease threat and increase safety and security so that we have strong and stable relationships to both be more effective in our own leadership and to help others be more effective in their work and in their lives. And to improve all of our ability to be our own best self-advocates. So we're going to have an opportunity today too to share stories and discuss how we want to use the knowledge in our deeper dive going forward. So first of all, let's have a chance, Mark, if you could advance the PowerPoint, that'd be great. So what are the outcomes that that you all really have come up with in your coach approach trainings? And one of the #1 outcomes that folks talk about is building our interpersonal skills and wanting to feel more successful in our everyday conversations and meetings. Another one that is a really strong component is strengthening others. Helping others to be critical thinkers and to solve their own problems, which in our role as leaders also takes more of the onus off of us for answering people's questions and allows them to answer their own questions. So it's a deep belief in other people's capacity and ability to solve their own problems. We work on improving relationships. And you know, my orientation is that all amazing things happen in relationship to others, and that's how we change our structures in our families and our communities and our work and in our own leadership. And we're leading adaptive change, and adaptive change really means being able to lead in, as we'll talk about later, in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, and to create the ability for people to be safe, seen, and heard so that we can create change. And then as all of us are system of care folks, we want to improve collaboration across the Pennsylvania system with all of our system partners, with youth and families and systems, and those of us who work in the systems. So we're really looking to be present, listening, and asking questions to seek others' perspectives. So we always start in our work with coach approach and as adaptive leaders with presence. So I invite each of you to join me in a presence practice to get us started today. So I invite you to feel your feet firmly on the floor. We always start any presence or centering with really feeling our feet grounded. You can imagine, if you'd like, that there are roots coming out of your feet, connecting you to the beautiful earth outside. invite you to notice your breathing. To lower your gaze or to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. As you notice your breathing, you may choose to breathe normally. You may choose to breathe more deeply. And I invite you to just feel the breath entering and leaving your body as you reset your own neurobiology. I invite you to bring your hand to your heart. To feel the support on your heart. To appreciate yourself. Continuing to notice your breathing. And a gratefulness for the way that you're showing up every day in this time of uncertainty and great social change. I invite you to extend your heart to the community we have here in this room together and in our time together. And when you're ready, I invite you into the presence, into this space that we have and will create together. And Ms. Val, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Mary Garrett, and thank you for that lovely presence exercise. I know I feel even more centered and ready to go. So want to just walk through a recap. I know for just about everyone on here, this is a recap of the mindset of Coach Approach. So one is that we have a deep respect for each individual's own learning and their development, what we otherwise call their who-ness. And we know also that there's often more than one right answer, particularly where there's a dilemma that someone is dealing with and there may be a number of different paths that the person could take. There's often more than one right answer. And our intention is that we always want to help the person to be more independent, to be stronger, to be more in choice. Because again, it's about their development, their ability to gain very important critical thinking skills, and to be able to feel capable and competent in themselves and in their decision making. And we are aware of our own biases, what we think the person should do. And as human beings, we're not going to be able to always help having those biases. However, we hold them lightly. And we hold the belief that people are inherently capable and competent. And sometimes we end up protecting people when we decide we'll give the answer or we want to be the ones to help them solve it or to solve the problem. And in doing so, we inadvertently stop them from growing, from stretching. And so if we keep that in mind, we will come to these interactions with the view that we know that this person has the answer. And it's by asking the right questions and allowing for that space for the answers to come. And another thing I'll mention that I know can be a habit of ours as coaches is that we might want to feel needed. We might want to feel that, wow, if we give the answer, how smart, how helpful have we been? And again, to be mindful of that, set that aside, because really it's about helping that person that we're working with to become able to think for themselves and think critically, to come to the decision that that's the best decision for them. Okay, next slide. SCARF model. David Rock developed this model. Again, it speaks to how, as human beings, we're wired for threats. And it's the following domains that we all have seen before. So we'll review together. S, status. How is it that we imagine that other people are seeing us, perceiving us, valuing us? Certainty. How confident are we in the future that we imagine for ourselves? Autonomy. How much ability do we have to act on our own without influence or control by others, to make our own choices and act on those? Relatedness. How connected are we feeling to other people? And fairness. Looking at, well, how well are we being treated compared to how we see or think other people are being treated? And this is hardwired in our brains. It triggers our limbic system to respond. And so when any of these SCARF threats arise, we are triggered immediately. Next slide. And so to sum it up in a nutshell, in simple language, we all want to feel safe, seen, and heard. We want a sense of control. We need and want a sense of certainty. And we want to see the situations that we may be involved in as fair. And so the neuroscience data that's been done shows that this is not something that we control. It's really a normal human involuntary need and response that we have. And so it's really a matter of how do we do this, right? Next slide. And so brain science tells us that, we act instinctively as do creatures in the wild, right? We are hardwired, our brains are hardwired for attention bias toward anything that we perceive as a threat, and especially when we are under stress. And so really, if we think about it, it is a survival mechanism, right? It keeps us safe. It helps us to be aware of and ready for an immediate response when we feel threatened. And so think about it in the context, and I've been thinking about this, for example, in the context of the current COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in, and how much our responses to things around the COVID threat are much stronger and more intense. I know I feel it more strongly and intensely in thinking about life in this environment that we're in. Parents who are about to send their children back to school. A year ago, when they were sending children back to school, yeah, there was a focus. How does that compare now to how parents are likely feeling now about sending their children back to school? There's this heightened sense of threat, lots of focus, lots of attention on, what are we going to do when we send our children back to school? So that's an example that I think of in terms of this is what we're living through now. Next slide, please. And so VUCA, right? The VUCA reality, the term that arose from the U.S. Army War College back in the 1990s to really describe the current world that we live in, that the world we live in is volatile, that it is certainly not predictable, and that there is uncertainty all around, that it is complex, and that it is often competing forces that are at play, and multiple ones. An ambiguity, that is, it's not really clear always what is going on. There can be mixed messages. It can be hazy around what it is that's actually going on. And that is not where humans do well. And so the role of the coach is to really help people, humans who we are naturally wired to, again, feel safe, sense of fairness, relatedness, to help humans thrive in this VUCA world, which bumps really up against what we need. And again, COVID is an example in my mind of a VUCA world, right? All of these things apply as we think about it. And so how to help people manage that we may be working with or supporting in some way, helping them to manage all of this is what the coach approach is about. How can we support people to be able to think critically around managing all of this, knowing what questions to ask, and helping the people that we work with to really develop strategies and skills in being able to manage this, to think critically, and to reduce the stress and anxiety that comes along with this. Next slide. I'll turn this over to Mary Garrett.
Thanks, Val. So, in thinking about this, right, the coach approach skill set is really set up to be able in our coaching conversations with other people in all areas of our lives to help people whose scarf might get snagged or who are looking for rewards around their scarf, their status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness in the VUCA world, to be able to help people and support people in their own development. And actually, it really helps in our development, I would say, is having been so fortunate to be on this journey. And I think that Val really gives us a great context because actually we have multiple social upheavals going on. We have COVID, economic impact of COVID. We have the death of George Floyd and the social unrest that's happened there, and a new way of living in this world that really gives us an opportunity in some ways in slowing down to notice more about what's happening. and how we are feeling, thinking, and creating stories around our response to it. So in the coach approach skill set, right, just as we started our conversation today, we start with presence and centering. And it's really our role as adaptive leaders to model these behaviors. So, Mark, thank you so much for being our slide controller. I have so little skills in this area. Time to build some new ones. So, you know, this is what we did, right? Taking a deep breath, resetting our neurobiology. And it takes constant presence, right? Because we're always, we as human beings get distracted. So it's really this opportunity to notice and to bring ourselves back, whether that's in our own centering practice and how we enter a conversation, how we enter a meeting. And it's also when we're in that conversation, right? Because we'll get distracted. And so how do we bring ourselves back in service to the person in front of us or the group in front of us? And so it's just this ability to notice and to make a choice. And that's really what presence and centering give us. And the next skill is listening. And I don't know about you, but I will always remember the first time we did this core skill listening activity. And how, if everyone remembers, we amped it up, like to be the problem solver, to be self-referential, or to be superficial. And, you know, how frustrated I remember people becoming and talking about and laughing, right? Because it just, you couldn't have a real conversation. And then the experience of practicing engaged listening. And it's like, you know, for people, this being heard, being seen through engaged listening is like being loved, right? So this ability to really listen without having to have the answers, to hold a space for another person, right? Like thinking about our hands on our hearts, how we hold a space for someone else. And just the incredible power of engaged listening. And then our next core skill is clarifying and reflecting. Mark, I'm on to the next one. And this is really, I mean, such a gift to each one of us, is when we're really listening, we're really hearing what people are saying in their words, and we have a chance to repeat or to restate them back to them. And it's so powerful if you think back to your coaching conversations that you have now and in the coach approach training, that it creates a chance, like when we hear our words back to us, it can open up something to us that we didn't really realize what was happening or what we were really saying. And when we summarize people's key points, it shows that we're tracking their conversation in a way that I know for me, sometimes my eyes literally roll up into my head as I'm thinking, and I'm not tracking. And so it's a real gift when we're engaged listening to be able to share that back with someone. And, you know, and when we're really listening, we have this great opportunity to hear what's not being said. And that really creates safety. And people know we really see them. So, you know, may I share an observation with you? It sounds like you're scared. Or what do you think is getting in the way, right? Like, I mean, that's a powerful question. That's the next slide. Oops. But, you know, like I'm sensing that you feel really sad. And that is such a way to help another person in service to them, really in service to them, to be in touch with their emotions, because our emotions, right, also can drive our thoughts and the stories that we tell ourselves. And to be able to be listened to and have someone clarify and reflect back to us is an amazing gift, to be able to see what's happening. And then I got a little ahead of myself, but asking good questions. And these tend to be the kind of the best, most powerful questions are how and what questions. And they're real questions. They're not advice in disguise. Have you thought about, or what do you think about, blah, 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 which might be advice in disguise, right? And they come from this sincere curiosity and respect for another human being. So when we are really listening and clarifying and reflecting for understanding and asking good questions, it is this real curiosity about who is the person in front of us today. And we, you may have a conversation with someone one day and we may think, oh, they're going to show up the same way the next day. But we're not. We show up in different ways in different moments. And actually a conversation, right, we can all think about how it sits with us and percolates within us. And so each time, having a sincere curiosity and respect for the person in front of you and who they might be in that moment. And asking good questions is really also allowing that person to determine their own outcome. What would you like to walk away with in our conversation today? What would you like the outcome to be? And that invites reflection on the other person. Or, how is this sitting with you when someone says something? Like, there are just so many ways to show such curiosity and interest in another person and to hold that deep belief that they're able to solve their own problems. And then the next skill is feedback and direct communication. And I know for me, so I'll tell a story about myself. When I first joined our local school board, I'm a big, part of my habit nature is asking a lot of questions, but they could come off as seeming like really putting people on the spot. And sometimes that's really rewarded in a public role. And then I realized I do need to do really good questions around what's happening and in my role as oversight. And I can acknowledge in any interaction, in anyone's work, I can find the positive things that they're doing. And that includes the community, the parents, the students, the administration, the teachers, anyone that I can find positive things that are happening and provide specific, grounded, and actionable feedback about that. I really appreciate the way you shared this information with me. I really appreciated the way you prepared to answer those questions, right? So, and this is the impact it had on me. It helped me understand it better, right? So we can give specific, grounded, and actionable feedback, and we can continue to be curious and be willing to have our views changed, right? By what we learn. And it's, and if you remember back to the coach approach training, right? Some of us are ferns and we need more of that. And some people are cactuses and they need less, and it may make us uncomfortable. And so we really want to be specific, and we really sometimes want to ask, how is this for you, right? Getting feedback. So I have a question that I want to kind of open up to the group, because you've heard Val and I talking for a while. And we'd love to hear kind of how this is sitting with you. So how can you and do you use the coach approach skill sets to support others to feel safe, seen, and heard? For anyone that is willing to share. And Mark is asking, are you a fern or a cactus related to positive feedback? So if you want to share, unmute yourself and share, or you can share in the chat.
Hi, it's Joan Kaminsky. So, hi, I wanted to share some experiences I've been having and how I've used the coach approach skill sets. It seems as though because we're working remotely more than in office, I've been asked questions of my team, and in order to empower them to figure out the answer to their own question, I've been using the what's, the hows, in order for them to reach their own answer. And I noticed in emails, it's been very frustrating and easier for them to stop all of their answers to my question. So I did notice that the coach approach for me seems to work much better if I'm on the phone with them, keeping them in constant communication, so there are no distractions with other emails and other things that they're doing, or if we have a very safe, socially distanced in-person meeting. They've been able to reach the answers to their questions better. But so for me, I do know it has helped tremendously on the phone and in person as opposed to email. It's been very frustrating trying to do it via email.
Joan, thank you so much for sharing, and I'm wondering what you think the difference is.
I think it's easier for them to be more distracted. When you're not having that face-to-face or their attention via telephone, I know for myself, yeah, an email will come across, but if something that I feel is more important comes up at the time, whatever that is, I seem to hold off on answering. So I think that might be the reason. It's just you're easily more distracted to have your hands somewhere else and your thoughts somewhere else, rather than paying attention to your supervisor's emails coming through constantly when there are other things going on. So yeah, that's my thought on it.
I'm finding myself wondering too how it relates to being safe, seen, and heard in person or on the phone.
Well, with the different personalities, I do know one team member prefers to be seen and heard. The other, I think, feels safer in email, and I'm not sure why. And I'm not sure if I'm even answering your question correctly, so I apologize.
No, it was just a question. It was, you know, I'm thinking about too, just to share, may I share a perspective with you?
Yes, please do.
So I'm thinking about all those skills that we use, right? Like the presence and centering, the active listening, the engaged listening, the clarifying and reflecting. It can happen more naturally in a conversation. And I hear what you're saying, that for some people, there's more safety in being able to digest it in an email. So that's that's just a thought or perspective, right? Because we can show all those things more in conversation often than an email.
Yeah, I just saw Ellen's chat. Oh, I'm sorry if I interrupted.
What did Ellen say? I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, things I do, that's a good point. I think things when they're typed in email or text could be misinterpreted because I may be saying something with a smile, but it may not come across that way in an email or a text. So when I pick up the phone and they hear me or see me, things change and things then begin to progress to get to the conclusion.
Or like as Val was talking about, there was somebody in one of our coach approach trainings who said it's like your scarf getting snagged because we can build a lot of meaning into what we can't hear in tone or see in someone's body about their intention. And so kind of relating back to scarf, do we, is the person's scarf getting snagged? It's just a question.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Joan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And I see Alex posted a question to the group. When might being seen or heard feel unsafe? And how could we manage that dynamic?
Hi, everybody, it's John. Just an interesting perspective on the conversation. I think given the format, the virtual format that we all have access to, I think it's something that Mary Garrett just said that was really powerful for me was hear what's not being said. So if you're having, communication via email and you're a little confused of the outcome, maybe schedule a Skype or a Teams or Zoom meeting just to see their reaction to how the words lie in them. From our last training, we talked about the power of silence. And, we might not be across the desk from someone, but you could certainly interpret someone's body language in a virtual format as well. So maybe repeating their own words to them in a format such as this. And again, that essence of hearing what's not being said, just kind of seeing how it lands on them, how that interaction lands for them. And I think that gives you an opportunity to, like Mary Garrett said, start to develop questions, the powerful how questions from that kind of, how it landed, how that first initial interpretation of the communication in a different form. Same question, different format. I wonder how powerful that might be.
Thank you, John.
And I think to the question of possibly when being seen or heard might feel not safe, or I forget the exact wording because I switched away from the chat. But I mean, I suppose it would probably be in situations where either the subject matter makes you uncomfortable hearing about it, or if it's something you don't feel comfortable talking about, whether it's just outside of your comfort zone or it's something traumatic that you're not ready to let back out yet. So.
That's a really good point, Brandon. And I think about, right, always that ability to say, may I offer something or may I ask a question? Because we want the consent of the person with whom we're talking, and believing in their ability to set their own boundaries. And then if we notice something that tells us that, right, being able to create safety by saying, hey, I'm noticing something here, or maybe that didn't come across the way I wanted, right? We always have a chance for recovery and in that deep commitment to someone else. I don't know. How does that land for you, Brandon?
I actually, that lands very well. I don't think I do it enough, and I think I should. I like the, before, I try to figure out, if I should ask something or if it's appropriate, if it might cause a bad reaction, but I like the idea of kind of putting forth the question and asking for consent to ask the question so that the person knows that, they can say, yeah, you can ask whatever you want, and I can ask it. And I think it still puts them in a place where they can be like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that, or I'm not comfortable discussing that. Like, you can ask, but I'd rather not engage there. So I like that a lot, actually.
Mary Garrett or Val, can I just throw a comment in?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And it really reminds me of something I've talked about in some of the trainings, and you all may have heard this before. But it's really takes us back to that idea of clarifying and reflecting, and especially and giving the other people that we're working with that absolute ability, permission to clarify and reflect. And it goes back to the story. This is back when I was at the county. Real quick, the managed care organization was reading a report about BHRS, Behavioral Health Rehabilitative Services. It read on paper that the child broke a glass case. And everybody, there's a little 5 or 6-year-old boy. Oh my God, he broke this glass hutch. Was he injured? Was all of this happened? But that's what was written on paper. So everybody jumped to their conclusion, which we'll go into in a second. What they did was they clarified. They followed back. And it wasn't a glass hutch or case. It was a glasses case. He got mad and broke a glasses case. So when they read it the one way, they read it and thought, oh my God. When they clarified and got that permission to kind of reach back and follow up, they learned, okay, this was not as significant. So I think that's in that idea of email and how are we really kind of coaching through email versus coaching in live, giving that permission to ask for clarification. Or even as the coach, please respond back if you, please, how do you see this? Or how do you understand this from what I'm saying? Because maybe I'm not a great writer. I'm not. And so maybe it just allows that information to kind of be brought back so that you make sure you're on the same page.
Thanks, Mark. Also want to point out, Imani shared a couple of comments, one being that the coach approach works well with people you work with who can sometimes be a challenge. Imani, are you able to say more about that and how this helps with that situation for you at work? And I don't know if she's still on with us.
Yes.
Oh,
I don't know about, hi everybody. I don't know about everybody else's experience, but I find sometimes I've used a coach approach on my unit because some people are very rigid in their thinking. And there's been times where sometimes my mind is moving so fast that I think before I speak. But I remember one of the things I learned when I was up in Harrisburg was to allow other people to slow down, stop, reflect, and to let other people talk. So that's one of the things I learned from the coach approach when I was up in Harrisburg. For me, when I'm on a unit and I'm working with people that sometimes could be, I might have a difficult worker or a challenging coworker, and they just fixing this one way of thinking. So what I did was I tried something different, something I actually learned when I was up in Harrisburg. Instead of me formulating answers and coming to my own judgments, I decided just to listen to them and to look at things from their perspective. And I had to admit that sometimes my thinking and what I thought wasn't always right. So the coach approach does help you when you're working with people that sometimes it's like you agree to disagree, but you still have to work with them. For me, I find that it's very helpful when I'm working with people that I don't always understand, what they're doing, or if I'm introducing something new on a unit, they don't understand it. So that's how it's been helpful for me. I find it to be very effective because now I don't have to be thinking, even I don't say nothing, but your body movements and all that, you see that you might not be you might not be on the same page. So now I've learned I can listen to them. I don't have to form any judgments. I don't have to answer or try to formulate an answer while they're talking about whatever. I can just listen. And then while I'm listening to them, after I finish hearing them talk, I say something like, what, well, why don't we try this? Or I think this, if it doesn't work, we can always go back to, whatever you was doing. But I like to try something different. So for me, That's how it's helpful for me. I know it might sound silly, but sometimes just shutting your mind down, not responding to everything, not formulating answers, not being quick to judge, and just sitting, listening, and reflecting on what the person is saying, and then you introduce your idea. I find that's what's worked for me on my unit. Thank you for letting me speak.
Amani, we're like giving you the, you know, the ASL hands in the air. What a powerful thing to be able to listen to people without having to formulate an answer, and to really listen, and all the things you learn. Thank you so much for being willing to share.
Thank you.
Thank you, Imani.
Anyone else before we go on to the next part?
There was just a comment from Melody
Yeah.
in the chat. I can read it off, Melody, if you want to jump in.
Go ahead, Mark.
Sure. Just Melody had kind of put out there that a person may be in an environment where that is not safe for them to speak about certain things. Then it might be then might be a time to ask, how would you like to communicate at this time? Email may be safer. Although I feel email is impersonal, there is a Google meeting in your Gmail where you can have an instant meeting as well. So just kind of, I think, as I'm reading that, Melanie, it's kind of looking at things from a bunch of different angles to really meet the person where they're at.
Yeah, and basically, you know, realizing that perhaps the conversation is not going as smoothly as we might have expected it to do, and ask the question how they would like to communicate at this time. They may not be able to say, well, I'm in a room where I don't want people to know what I'm talking about, you know, or even make a statement. So rather put out there, how would you like to communicate? And they may say, well, I'd rather email right now, or whatever. And I'm just going off of that safe place to interject or speak their minds. Now, yeah, email being impersonal, that's my stuff. I don't try to put it on anybody, but I do. I think it's very impersonal. And I personally would rather someone to text or even talk. I know with my family members, with a couple, I've done the Google Meets. It's something that I just saw pop up on my Gmail, and I can send them an instant link and they can click on it and we're in a meeting, or we're at least doing a face-to-face. And that works well when engaging with the family members. And I actually did that with a new family member who was very, very anxious. And I thought it might help for her to see, because she had never seen me before. We were meeting over the phone, and it did help the conversation. Like, she was able to calm down, was able to be present as I can be. And I think she felt that. And so that worked out very well. So I just wanted to share those few things.
Yeah, I'd like to say something, please.
Yes.
Hello? Yes, I have the coach approach training had really, I guess, taught me a lot about myself. I first noticed the change working with my children. You know, I'm raising a 16-year-old, 11-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. But especially with the older ones, and with something that I've always done, is that when I'm talking to them, I'll start doing something. And I was really listening, but I might start folding clothes. I may start doing something else. And I hear what they're saying, but after going through the coach approach training, I realized that I feel like I heard everything they said, but to them, if I'm doing something else, I think I learned that they don't have my undivided attention. So, and I find it very easy to use like the coach approach with the children. I am struggling so hard, and I no longer work. I'm retired. So most of my I have people that I'm very close to. And then people, more like acquaintances or, just not people that I'm very close to. But the people that I'm very close to, I can count the times maybe on one hand. Melody, don't say a word. But I can count the times on one hand that I'm able to use the coach approach. I want to take pins and pin my mouth shut, but this thing is just inside of me. It is so, so difficult. So that's, it's a work in progress and I'm working on it. But when it comes to people I'm close to, it's just so, and I'm close to my children, but it's a different level, I think, than a, very close friend. It's just hard to know they're going through something and just ask them, like I might say, well, what have you done about that, in the past? Or, well, I already know what they did about it in the past. So it's just for me, it's very, very difficult. I feel that I will get there at some point, I'm hoping. But you have to excuse me squirming. I'm in my car, which is my office, and this mosquito keeps trying to get me. So I've been fighting him off. But, I think, well, he did get me one time, or she got me one time. But anyway, it's just difficult for me. I was just so proud of myself with the children. And that was my first, first time that I tried it. But as time went on, it's so, so difficult for me. Mm-hmm. And I think if they were sitting with me, I'm actually squirming because I just want to do something other than
listen,
use the coach approach.
Martha, may I offer something?
Yes.
So, well, I know that Alex is saying the coach approach is so great with children. It's a great way to help them preserve and build their status. And I always think of my son, like he is when his scarf is snagged, it's so obvious, right? The way that kids show us. And I really hear you about, how in our friendships where we have this history and way of interacting, that can actually be, for me too, one of the hardest places, like my close female friends, and changing, and bringing the coach approach. And especially when there's more than one person, right? Like when it's easier for me when there's one. But I hear you. And I just also want to say, you're living in a VUCA world in that car with that mosquito after you.
I'm telling you, I probably weigh 1,000 more pounds than she does. But it's like it was a mad dog after me because she's determined that she's going to bite me. And got me once, but I'm determined that it's not. So I don't know, and I kind of think it's going to win because it goes in the back of me after the back of my arm, and it's comical. But anyway, that's why I was squirming around, if you happen to notice.
Thank you both to you and Melody for sharing from your experiences using the coach approach.
And I'd like to share something as well. First of all, I'm just so happy and proud to hear from the family members on this call. Martha, Imani, Melody, there's a note from Sheila that she wrote in the comments about how she used it in family court with her grandson. It has so many implications and ways that it can be used, right? And it's always going to turn out perfectly. We're going to have those people that we have to work a bit harder, right? To get what we think we want to get out of it. However, you're using it. It's like you're adopting it. It's part of the way you're doing things. So I'm just thrilled. Just keep on doing what you're doing, and feel free to reach out to me at any time around any of this. So thank you.
You're welcome. It was a valuable tool. It really has been. You're never too old to learn something different.
Absolutely.
I'm going to mute myself because of the traffic. What did I do?
I appreciate all the sharing that's happening in the chat too. It's a really beautiful community that we have here. And I'm going to turn it over to Val because we're going to talk about the ladder of inference, which has been brought up multiple times in this conversation.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm sure everyone remembers, thinking back, this ladder of inference, right? Which is about how we see and experience things that we can see in front of us. But we don't have all the information, right? We see what we see. And then we make certain assumptions, draw conclusions, and then we end up the ladder many times without it being really valid, but it's where we take ourselves. And so I'm going to delve a little bit more into, so what is this about, and why do we do this? Again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. We react out of fear. We're fear-based, right? This is how we operate. So when we perceive a threat, that's how our lens, what's the lens we're looking at it? And so if we see something and we can choose, well, we're going to look at it as negative or we're going to look at it as positive, we'll tend to go toward the negative, right? It's a way so that we can be prepared, because if this is not good news, if this is something that's going to threaten me, I need to be ready, right? I need to be ready. So that's where our head goes. And it's a natural thing. It's not a judgment about that we do it. It's just, as human beings, this is what we do. And so that's all right. You can go to the next slide, Mark. Thanks. And so talking about our filters. So I mentioned that. So what are the filters that we're bringing to any given situation? And we each have our own, because it's based on who we are as individuals, our life experiences. And how we see what's going on has more impact than what we see. How are we viewing this? And it's really a part of our identities, who makes us who we are. Some filters are more easily changed than others, but we all bring those. And I can share a situation, years ago, not where I'm working now, but I was working for a supervisor who was pretty intense, pretty demanding. And I'd worked for someone similar in the past, very, very, even more so. So my lens, was around, I have to be really careful when a supervisor contacts me. So get an email to come and see this particular supervisor in his office, like that day, like an immediate type thing. And I remember thinking, I had just delivered this report, and there must be something wrong with this report, either something I missed or something I misstated. And so I was all prepared for, okay, so when I get there, I know I'm going to be, called on the carpet for something about this particular report by this person. Well, turns out, went to his office, sat down, and it had this conversation nothing to do with this report. And in fact, it wasn't even a negative interaction. I couldn't tell you what it was about, because we tend to remember like the negative thing we were thinking. But in any event, it was where I had taken this situation, this email asking for a meeting. And what filter was I using? Again, I was using this filter of, well, whenever the boss calls me in or a supervisor calls me in, it's going to be about something that I didn't do right, something I'm going to get in trouble for. So next slide, Mark. Thanks. And so this takes this is more of a step-by-step, that process that I just described that I experienced, right? You know, information. The boss sent a short email asking to see me. There's the information. It's objective. In and of itself, it means nothing, right? Sent me an email, wants to see me. The meaning that I put to it, I must have done something wrong. So I gave it a meaning that was my own meaning. Didn't come from really anywhere, anything to do with this email. It wasn't like the email said, you need to come to my office because you are in trouble or you did something that needs to be corrected. It was, I added that, so I must have done something wrong. And the assumption I made was when I go there and have this meeting, I need to be prepared to be called on the carpet, to be reprimanded. And so when we make these leaps and jumps from a piece of information, this is where it lands us in this place of hyper vigilant and ready to be prepared to have to respond. So, you know, next slide, Mark. Okay, so this ladder of inference, which, you know, we've all experienced, and how it is we jump up the rungs to make certain conclusions. How do you all think that the coach approach model might be able to help you with this jumping the rungs of the ladder? Any thoughts, ideas?
Do you mind if I just kind of give an example of kind of one that I see on a day-to-day basis?
Sure.
So many of you have newspaper headlines, or some of you even do Twitter. If you think about our world with newspaper headlines and Twitter, it's 140 characters for Twitter, and newspaper headlines are normally 5, 6, 7 words. They are almost built on our ladder of inference. So we put our values, our beliefs, our thoughts about whatever is written there, and automatically kind of jump to conclusions. I can say for myself, I would jump sometimes to the conclusion of what that article or what they're trying to ultimately say, because I put my value, my thoughts, my morals into that piece. And I think that's where, like, in that even day-to-day basis, where I really see that ladder of inference of us just jumping to, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen. If you're in Facebook, how many times did you read in the comments of Facebook, did you even read the article, or did you just read the headline? Because they're going off on this tangent that was never in there, but it was all kind of what they were thinking. So just my example of kind of things that I've done to even jump. And part of that is sitting back and realizing, well, I don't have all the data. Before I can really comment on anything, I need to figure out what is actually being said.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. Any other thoughts about, in your experience, how you've jumped the ladder of inference, or you know someone who has, and the coach approach model has somehow been helpful? Okay, so we can move on then to the next slide, which is around, so how do we go forward, knowing that we live in a VUCA world, we're wired for SCAR, and how can we create a sense of still well-being and being able to move forward as the leaders we all are, from whatever chair we sit in, right? So the first is, when we react, model the behavior. How is it we want to show up? How do we want others to see us show up in that given situation, right? If we act like we're chaotic and just losing it over the situation, when we're with others, that's that's going to create more anxiety, and they're going to get ramped up and amped up as well, right? So modeling behavior. And as Mary Garrett took us through earlier, really taking that time for presence. It could be for ourselves if we're struggling, if we're jumping that ladder of inference, if we're feeling threatened, really taking that time to center, to take some time for ourselves to be present, or with the person that we're trying to support through this. Listening. Again, the value of listening cannot be overstated. As Mary Garrett said earlier, being listened to is like being loved. And so really taking that time to listen. And then to also clarify and reflect what you're hearing. What is that person saying? What is their body language saying? And then being able to give it back so that they say, yeah, that's it. She got it. He got me. And realizing like, yeah, somebody gets me. Celebrating successes, right? We're so, again, because we're so wired to think about the negative and what's going wrong and what's threatening us, make time for when things go right, to celebrate those. For ourselves, when we're successful at something and we achieve something, and for others, to help them realize and celebrate those successes as well. And practice and model every day. It really is a practice. It takes energy and it takes some time. However, what's the saying? Practice makes perfect. And so while we're not looking for perfection, it's really about being able to model and continue to do that every day, so it really becomes a part of your everyday being. And in doing so, you'll set a tone and a presence and an environment where people will feel safe because they are being seen and they're being heard. So Mary Garrett, do you want to take everyone through are we going to have time for this next piece?
So yes, we have some time for this next piece. We don't have time to do breakouts, and that's fine. We really appreciate everyone's engagement and in our time together today. So these are just questions that we put out to you all about thinking about how you have been using, or any of us have been using, the coach approach mindset and skill set to support others to be safe, seen, and heard. So that's the first question. I'll just kind of go through them. I mean, you all are perfectly capable of reading these too, but I know some people may just be on audio. So what has worked well for you? What questions do you have to bring back to the larger group, or what questions do you have now about the conversation that we've had so far? And then finally, after we have the initial conversation, we'll talk about what future webinars or learning circles you might want to have. So kind of starting at the top, we talked about this a little bit before, but are there any other examples, or someone that hasn't had the opportunity to talk about how using the coach approach mindset and skill set have supported others to feel safe, seen, and heard, to be safe, seen, and heard?
This is Claire. Hi, everybody. I did want to just share a particular incident that had happened with a family that I don't work with directly, but it was a family that one of my teammates was working with. And this particular family has a long-standing history, both within our organization and within sort of the community, of really being challenging to work with, this mom in particular. And she had actually, we were notified because she had actually just fired her hi-fi team the day before because they weren't giving her what they needed. So I agreed to jump on a video call with one of my family peer support partners and sort of talk through everything. And I already had a preconceived notion of who this person was because several of my other partners have worked with her before. But I made a conscious decision to go in without jumping any ladders, without doing any of that, and really just listened to what she was saying and used the same. I worked really hard. I actually got my book out before the call and said, I said to her, do you mind if I make an observation? And she said, go ahead. And I said, it just sounds like you really feel like no one in any of these meetings has been hearing you, has been hearing what you had to say. And she was like, that's it. That's totally it. Nobody hears me. And then as soon as that was validated, we were kind of able to come up with a plan for this upcoming meeting and, how we could help her feel heard before and after the meeting, even if she didn't feel heard in the meeting. And I just got word back from my family peer support partner today that she said the meeting went seamlessly. There was no yelling. There was no shouting. And when she was debriefing with this particular mom after the call, the mom said, I knew it was okay because after the meeting, I knew you would help me feel heard and by debriefing. And so, it wasn't just me doing it on the call with her, but then allowing one of my teammates to sort of model that with her afterwards. And it just felt really, I didn't do anything special. I just sort of mirrored what she had said, but it really worked. So very, very happy that I had those skills to use during that call.
Thank you, Claire. That was amazing. I mean, that is an excellent example of how this works, and people feel safe. They're able to move forward.
And I think, may I offer a perspective, Claire? What
Absolutely.
a transformational leader you were, and what you brought to a whole way of interacting with this family. Just, how people get labeled. It happens to all of us and all sorts of systems, and how there's so much more to someone's story. And by just allowing that, and I love pulling out your manual, right? Which I did today for the presence practice. I was like, I want to do what Beth did in that training you were in, right? How we remind ourselves, how we bring the tools and remind ourselves that we have the ability to create change in any chair, right?
And really taking the time to make sure that I had checked myself before the meeting and made sure that I had let go of my my preconceived notions about what it was going to be like and who she was, and just really being present with her in that moment was also, I think, very helpful because she knew that I was coming at her from a genuine perspective. I mean, to be honest with you, she's fired 2 of our family peer support partners in the past 2. So we really, it was really, I just really needed to be present in that conversation, and it worked. It really worked. So.
And she felt it.
Just imagine if all of the workforce that works with families and young people had, could bring that to what they do. Just the results and the outcomes would be amazing. And also Ellen, I don't know if you saw Claire Ellen's question, can we use your example in our future teaching around this? Because it is such a powerful example.
Absolutely. And I would say that it's because of this teaching that I was able to do that and to enter the conversation without putting my own biases in and really be present for her. So yes, absolutely, you can use it.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire. Anyone else?
Anyone else? Sorry.
There's an echo.
Can you hear me?
Benita?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Benita.
Can y'all hear me?
Can you hear
Okay,
us?
so I want the question right here where it say, what question do you want to bring back to the large group? I want to answer that. So when you dealing with a difficult situation, like when you kind of coach somebody, and like you used to coach a post, sorry, you used to coach a post, the assist somebody to assist yourself. And when you finish, it feels as though like you overwhelmed. Like how do you is it a way that you can coach yourself to bring yourself back together, or what should you do as a coach? How do the coach get coach to coach? Am I making sense? So low.
Now you're
Y'all hear
muted.
me?
Maybe someone else heard it better than me. You were coming in and out, Benita.
I think I can restate it. So what I think what Benita has said, and Benita, correct me. So after you're coaching someone and you're kind of getting all this information, what might you do to kind of coach approach yourself to bring you back to a place of harmony? Because it sounded like and this is, Benita, I'll kind of put my kind of thoughts on this. It sounded like you were taking a lot of these conversations in and really kind of holding them. And a way to kind of release that energy or release that full bucket of things that are kind of floating there.
Is that what you were saying, Benita? Just confirming. Does that sum it up, what Mark said?
I guess you're nodding.
You're on mute. Okay, you're saying yes. All right. Yeah, so, managing our own feelings, our own emotions when we're engaged with someone, that does come up. And, part of it is, a big part of it is maintaining that presence that we keep saying over and over again, right? The importance of really being solidly grounded when you are with that person and you're supporting that person. It's not to say that you don't have feelings. We all, of course, have compassion, a sense of, wanting and feeling of empathy. However, in order for us to really be able to be there for that person, presence is part of what helps with that. Being mindful that when that's happening, what can we do to really center ourselves in that moment, and keeping the focus on the other person, that it's really about what that other person is dealing with, and not so much absorbing it as talking it through with them around how they can manage it, right? Helping them to come to some place of feeling like they've resolved it, that they are in a better place. And yeah, it is a skill. It is a skill that can be developed. And it's an excellent question because it does come up. It's come up for me in my coaching. So it's an excellent question. And, again, I'll put out the offer, Benita, if you really want more one-to-one around working on that, I'm glad to talk with you about that. And I hope that what I just said was helpful. Benita, are you able to hear? You're on mute.
See if I can.
I thought she was frozen for a minute. Right. Benita, I don't know that she.
Yeah, it might be a connection issue as well.
It might be a bad connection. Okay. Are there any other observations or questions or responses to the questions on the slide?
I will throw a little plug out there for anybody. I know that we have about 10 or more of our coaches, both from RPA 8 coaches, so Val, Mary Garrett, Doris Arena, Dwayne Hicks, Ann Katona Lynn, myself, and Lisa. I think I'm forgetting somebody, but excuse me. We do have coaching hours that we're all working towards as part of our international coaching certificate. So it could be a great opportunity to work with any of those individuals and get some sessions in to really start addressing some of those challenges and thinking about ways that you want to address them yourselves through a coaching session. So encourage that as well.
Thanks for the plug, Mark. Put you on retainer.
I'm gonna get Val first.
Is there anything, what about if no one has anything left, I just want to create a little bit of extra space in case anyone has anything they want to share about the first 3 questions. Have you been using the coach approach mindset and skill set to support others to be safe, seen, and heard? What has worked well for you? Or what other questions that you have to bring back to the larger group? And I really, Benita, appreciate the question that you raised for all of us. Anyone else for those first 3 questions?
This is Melody. I can say that the coach approach mindset and skill set, when I am facilitating our family member committee meeting, I think it works extremely well. I will sometimes put a question out, a good question. And really the family members, I think all of them feel extremely safe and I know they're seen. I try to make sure that I make sure that if someone has a question or whatever, that I address that. But I think overall, the group itself and the group runs about 25 family members. I think all of them feel safe, seen, and heard. If I'm wrong, ladies, tell me. In our meetings, and what has worked well with me with that particular group is being able to ask the questions, the open-ended questions, and kind of putting it on the floor. And then one person will say something, and that kind of bounces to the other person, and they start to open up one by 10, by 15, and then there's just no stopping them. There's no stopping us because I'm one of the family members. What I'll bring back to the larger group being who? Mary Garrett.
Oh, all of us here today and in the future.
I don't know what questions I have. I know I struggle, and I'm going to work with that in the coaching. I'm going to ask for coaching is with the appropriate questions, like quick-mindedly, able to come off with them. What I don't want to do is be present and trying to think of an open-ended question.
I don't want none of you.
So I need more practice with that, and that's something that I'll work on with Val. So you hear me, right, Val?
I hear you. I got you.
In the coaching session, that's something that I struggle with, because I want it to come naturally. I don't want it to sound as though it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not sincere, you know, and it's just a question, but I want it to flow. And so that's something that I love.
Melody, I think, and Val is your girl, right? Like, I think all of us, almost all of us on this call have at some point worked on that as our learning goals. And then I go back to it, right? So I think you're identifying something that, you know, is like that ability to just let it come without getting stuck in our head about it, right? And being present. And one of the things that Beth Greenland, who you met when we trained in Philly, right, says is just believe that the questions will come to you. And if you're present, they will come to you. And I also love the way you ask for honest feedback right here in the moment, right? You know, you all let me know, right? I mean, just what a great modeling of being open to feedback. And I also have to say, for me, I really appreciate the instant Google Meetup kind of thing. Like, I had never thought about that. And all the things that we're learning at this time that we can use going forward, right? When it's a safer world for us to be more together in person. So thank you so much for that tool.
And Mary, I think you have a question from Amani, and then getting very close to the end here.
Yeah, thank you. And you're getting feedback, Melody, right here in the chat. And what's Amani's question? Could you read it for me, Mark? Because I may have
Oh, no,
missed
she just has her hand raised, so I'm not sure. Maybe that might be an accident.
Sorry. Okay, Amani. I'm not very good at this part yet. I'm working on it.
Maybe not.
Go ahead. Do you want to unmute yourself, Amani?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have a question. I just have I just wanted to make a comment. Melody does do a very good job at facilitating, asking questions, and engaging all of the family members. I just wanted to say I do feel safe. I know this might sound a little silly, but sometimes when I hear information or I see words or run across things I don't know, sometimes I feel like I don't want to say ashamed, but I feel like I should know that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just saying that because I'm thinking about a word that I never even saw, and I looked up the word and everything, but because I never saw that word, it wasn't familiar with me. The first thing I said to myself, how come I don't know this word? I should know this word, but I had never saw the word before. And I had to reach out to people who had explained to me what the word meant. Of course, I looked it up before they told me what it meant, but still, I felt that I couldn't. I just felt a little taken back that I didn't know what it was. And sometimes, as a family member, and you come across information and you really don't know how to interpret it, and you don't know what it is. So I came across an unfamiliar word. Fortunately, I reached out to people that explained to me, what the word was. So I can see somebody coming in, going through the training and then running across something that sounds familiar with them. And then they have to familiarize themselves with it. And not that I'm not stupid or anything, but sometimes you feel like, oh, gee, that's common sense. Why didn't I know that? Why didn't I figure that out? That's the skill set I should have been known. But because of the coach approach, I'm learning some things about myself, and I'm learning that I'm learning to be more insightful when I'm listening to other people. Because sometimes, you go to a training and your mind is always coming up with answers. You're thinking that you answer the question before they even ask you, and that's not good because you don't learn like that. So now I'm learning to be more insightful in my listening and to look at things from a different perspective. And sometimes some of those things are not easy or not hard as a family member. They're hard. They're not always hard they're not easy to accept. I got a doctor statement, about a month ago, which was very hard. I knew it, but it was very hard for me to accept what I read on the paper. But unfortunately, I reached out to some people, and they encouraged me, inspired me, and made me feel better. But still, it still took a while for that feeling to go away. So as a person that's learning, sometimes when you go into a new set, you learn new information. It's like a hit and miss, and then one day the light bulb comes off. Oh, this is what Ellen was talking about when I was in Harrisburg. That's all I wanted to say.
May I offer perspective, Amani?
Yeah.
So that's true for all of us, right? It hits us at different times. And as Ellen would say, we're all learners and we're all teachers. And I really respect your feedback on the use of language. And, and I would invite you really to help us think about that, right? Like because the goal is to make it accessible and to make it work for everybody, right? And so if there's something we could be doing differently, I really invite you, whether it, letting Val know, like what we could do.
I'll say it.
So thank you for the bravery that it took. And then one other thing, can I share one other perspective? When you jump your own ladder of inference and you jump to the conclusion that you should know something that you don't know. Mm-hmm. We're all learners and we're all teachers.
So it looks like we are really over time. So it's been great conversation. And thank you all for your input and your ideas and your experiences. Thanks for sharing that and taking this time to learn together again. So sorry to be over time. And we will see you all at the next one.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Monty.
Yay.
I'm sorry, can I just stay on just for a second? I just have to send you like the biggest, most incredible hugs, really. Mary Garrett, Val, you just really created a space for conversation that was so beautiful.
I agree. It was awesome. You guys sound very comfortable too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing. We got present before.
I even went outside to get present with the birds. So that helped on a nice day.
Val Olds for president. Did you like that little? I just couldn't. It was just bursting out of me. When I hear vision coming out, it's like, follow you anywhere. Okay, follow you both anywhere. Follow all of you anywhere. Okay, I'm gonna run. I have 3 o'clock myself. I just had to send hugs. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ellen.
Bye, Ellen.
Bye, Ellen.
Oh, man.
All right, Mark, thank you for all your technical and other support, chiming in just with those questions and picking up where there were these trying to get conversation moving. You too, Alex. I see you through one or two.
Yeah, sorry about the one time I was late on the slide. It was odd. I got a phone call and it was from Zoom,
A call from Zoom while you're on
Yeah,
Zoom?
it came up at the call ID as Zoom, and I'm like, what is happening?
Oh, wow.
And it was on my personal phone. So I'm like, that's why I was just like, what is going on? Like, I'm thinking like somehow like there was a glitch in this. I have no idea what it was still, but it was just really odd.
Well, and I realize part of my learning edge, right, is that I really am not, I haven't learned how to follow a chat. I'm not good at it even when I'm a participant. And so I'm so grateful to you, Mark and Alex, for managing the chat, and then you, Val, reminding me. And then, you know, Mark, really, I was thinking too, we should learn to advance our own slides. I just don't know how to do it yet. And so thinking about, you know, where my learning edge is, and how grateful I am to you and Alex for the technical expertise you bring in managing all those pieces.
Well, and I think that's something that we'll see, especially when we're doing the virtual coach approach. It's really in that kind of background piece when the people that are instructing are really kind of out there in the front doing the language and getting everybody there. So it's almost that tech person that is in the back monitoring and looking at the chat and saying, okay, here's something that came out. But now it's not just one person that does it. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I can see where it's helpful to have like the background people who can like send, like I was getting little messages, you know, like from Ellen and other people like, oh, look at the, you know, respond to the so-and-so chat or whatever. I'm like, oh, you know, so because it is hard to divide the attention. Maybe that's something you build up to over time. I wasn't able to really keep pace.